WBCB presents Pro Wrestling Weekly.
The longest-running pro wrestling radio talk show in the history of terrestrial radio.
And he's obviously Michael Cole.
Call in with a question or comment at 215-949-3232 or 888-922-2149.
Talking wrestling.
Yeah.
Because that's what this show's about. That's what we've been doing for over 16 years.
No. It's about sports entertainment.
And now here are your hosts of Pro Wrestling Weekly, Fearon Derry and Lucas DeSangro.
Will you stop marking out over there?
Sorry.
Move over, kid. I'm taking your microphone.
You're shallow. You know that?
I'm running on 2 hours of sleep. I don't remember what the hell I do anymore. There's the sound of the bell, and we are set to go. This is Pro Wrestling Weekly here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com. Happy flu year, everybody. Fearon Derry back here with you after an absence last week. I was all set to get down to the MFPW arena, and at about 10:30 last Saturday morning, after feeling what felt like the effects of a cold, I thought, all right, I'll just take some medicine and be kind of good with it. Right around that point, it hit me like a ton of bricks or maybe a Goldberg spear or something along those lines. And next thing you know, I was down for the count with the flu as well as a 103-degree fever. So as much as I wanted to be down at the MFPW Arena last Saturday to check out the activities and broadcast live for you here for Pro Wrestling Weekly, I was unable to do either. And it was not fun, to say the least. But back in the saddle here and flying solo. And we'll be getting to your phone calls in just a little bit here at 215-949-3232 and toll-free at 888-922-2149. Quite a bit to get into over the course of the past couple of weeks. I'll get into some of the stuff that I missed last week due to my immune system's incompetence. We'll, I guess, call it that. One of the big stories from last week, an Allentown, Pennsylvania judge dismissing homicide charges against WWE Hall of Famer Jimmy Superfly Snuka relating to the 1983 death of his girlfriend. Lehigh County Judge Kelly L. Bannock stating that Snuka's mental state left him incompetent to stand trial in the death of Nancy Argentino, that being his girlfriend at the time. Snuka was charged in 2015 with third-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter after a grand jury determined that he assaulted Argentino and left her to die back on May 10th of 1983. Now, it's important to stress that the judge's decision to drop the charges does not mean that Snuka was found not guilty, but rather that he was unfit to stand trial due to dementia. Not to mention the stories that have been going around regarding a cancer that he's been given only a few months to live. So some bittersweet news, I suppose, for the Hall of Famer Jimmy Superfly Snuka that the charges have been dropped. Although I have a hunch that speculation will always run rampant regarding that when it comes to the, I guess, shadow over his career, although that hasn't stopped him from becoming a Hall of Famer, as that was done way back in the 90s, 96, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. Also, Anthem putting an official announcement out there, announcing on Wednesday of last week that it has entered into a definitive agreement to acquire a majority interest in TNA Impact Wrestling and has formed Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions, LLC. Now, Anthem also owns Fight Network, which is the world's premier 24/7 multi-platform channel dedicated to complete coverage of combat sports and its Impact Wrestling's exclusive broadcast partner in Canada as well as worldwide digital partner. Some quotes regarding it. Ed Nordholm, who's the executive vice president of Anthem Sports and Entertainment, he says, "We are thrilled to have acquired TNA Impact Wrestling. As we grow Anthem's linear, digital, and mobile platforms globally, top-tier content with global appeal is key to that success, and this acquisition is a perfect strategic addition to our portfolio. Impact has been a dominant wrestling brand around the world for more than a decade, and we are confident that Anthem can leverage its assets and strategic partnerships to take Impact Wrestling to even greater heights." Now, Nordholm, who had been managing director of Impact Ventures Board of Managers since this past October, will assume the position of president of Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions, LLC, and Dixie Carter will resign from her position as chairman of Impact Ventures and joined the advisory board of Fight Media Group, which holds all of the combat sports-related assets of Anthem. And her focus will be on the global growth of combat sports-related brands owned by Anthem. Carter saying adding in a statement, Anthem has been a great partner for many years. We have worked hard to find the right company who would acquire TNA, use its strategic influence, and have a long-term commitment to the brand. TNA's incredible fans, talent, and staff deserve to see the brand continue to thrive after 15-plus years of incredible growth. I'm excited to move to a new position and work with Anthem on their global strategic plan, and I'm confident TNA Impact Wrestling is going to be a huge part of their success. And for those wondering, Carter will remain a minority equity stakeholder. So not quite out of the woods there yet for those hoping for her departure, I suppose. Or at least, well, I don't know. It just says that she'll be a minority equity stakeholder. So she's still going to be around, although whether she's on television is a whole nother story in that regard. Oh, goodness. And, of course, this weekend. That's right. A little bit later this afternoon, at least, for those, I guess, afternoon for those of us here on the East Coast. But coming up at 3 this afternoon, day one of the two-day United Kingdom Championship Tournament, the company's first UK champion. We'll get a little bit more into that here in the course of the hour and talk about the brackets. A little bit of bracketology in January. And no, it doesn't have anything to do with basketball, I suppose. Well, no, I know for a fact it doesn't have anything to do with basketball necessarily. But we'll see where things go in that regard. Let's go ahead and get over to the phones where we've got Ed from Northeast Philly hanging on. Ed, welcome to Pro Wrestling Weekly.
Can you hear me now?
I could hear you before as well as now. Yes, sir.
You were like fading out a little bit.
That might have very well been my own voice here. I'm still recovering from the affects of the flu from last week, or aspects and affects of the flu, and
I'm recovering from the cold myself.
Yeah, it's getting everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's on your mind today?
Crazy weather this week.
Do we lose you there?
What? No, I'm here. I'm here.
Seem to have some issues with the telephone here. Is that I can't seem to get Ed up here. So hang on just a moment. We'll get you back on here, Ed, and see if we can figure out what's going on with the audio issues here. As can't quite seem to get it squared away here. All right. Let me take care of a quick. You know what? Yeah, we'll hit it a little bit early here. We'll take care of our first time out while we get some technical issues out of the way here, and then we'll come back and we'll get to Ed here. We'll give him the full amount of time, and I gotta love the technical issues. They're fantastic. This is Pro Wrestling Weekly here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
Hi, Tom Mellon from Team Toyota. Remember to listen to our show, Let's Go Places with Tommy Toyota, live here on 1490 WBCB, dedicated to our local hometown veterans, policemen, and firemen. Call me anytime for an appointment at 215-768-6505. That's 215-768-6505 for your exclusively discounted vehicle selection, and $50 will be donated in your honor to our specially selected charities. Stop by and see me, Tommy Toyota, at Team Toyota, Business Route 1, Langhorne.
Are you curious what old antiques, collectibles, or household contents are worth? Listen Friday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. for What's It Worth with Mike the Appraiser, right here on 1490 WBCB.
Join Rebecca's forecast at her new time, Tuesday at 10 a.m. She'll take your calls, questions, and fill you in on what's happening for your personal sun sign. Join Rebecca's forecast once again at her new time every Tuesday at 10 a.m. right here on 1490 WBCB.
Got the Luigi death stare from Fearon, so we might have
I didn't give you the Luigi death stare. That's not true.
You're breaking kayfabe.
Breaking cape. I'm going to break something else during this commercial.
There we go. That's what I like to see.
And now, more Pro Wrestling Weekly with your hosts, Fearon Derry and Lucas DeSangro.
Are we getting into that controversy again?
I know how it feels, and it's not fun.
Welcome back to Pro Wrestling Weekly here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com. Believe we have the audio issues squared away here. Let's go ahead and get Ed from Northeast Philly back on the line here. Ed, we good to go here?
Yes.
All righty. It's almost as if you had that as a premonition that you'd asked right in the beginning, can you hear me now? And next thing you know, the audio, something was up with it. It's like you're living, like the equivalent of Gary Spivey or something like that. Remember that from Mr. Wonderful from back in the day? 95, I think that was. Anyway, what's going on? What's on your mind here?
CZW tonight at 7:30 in Voorhees. Sammy Callahan and Joe Casey on the card.
Oh, very nice.
And NXT is coming next month to Asbury Park on February 10th and at the Tower February 9th with a 7 p.m. bell time.
Oh, very nice. You said that's right. It's coming up. It's coming up in February. You said, I believe, right? February 9th for that's a Thursday for the Tower Theater, and then the Asbury Park Convention Hall on the 10th.
Road to WrestleMania goes through Allentown and Hershey, Pennsylvania, March 18th and 19th.
Oh, yeah, that's coming up in a couple. Well, that would make sense because it'd be the road to WrestleMania, even though, that road starts just 2 weeks from tomorrow with the Royal Rumble, or at least that's what's.
Tickets for those shows go on next weekend.
Oh, sounds good to hear for those who don't mind doing a little bit of traveling. The weather will be a little bit warmer by that point, and may not be a bad way to get to an event pretty close to WrestleMania since, I'll talk a little bit about it coming up later in the hour here, but there's a possibility that we may not see Mania coming up north here anytime in the near future, unfortunately, based on...
Yeah, I was disappointed to hear about that when I seen that.
Well, there was the news that was announced, and I'll read more of the official thing of it, but the announcement as far as WrestleMania 34 for 2018 for next year, goodness, we're talking 15 months from now. It was announced this past week that it that will emanate from the Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana, for the second time in a 5-year span, as it was also there for WrestleMania 30 back in 2014.
But we are going to get Battleground, somebody told me.
Oh, Battleground will be in Philly?
That's what someone told me.
There have been so many...
rumors.
Rumors in general, or Philly's rumored to get this particular pay-per-view or that one, but I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when it gets there.
Yeah, we were supposed to get that pay-per-view back in December, and then they changed it to Boston, I think.
Oh, that's happened a couple of times where we were supposed to get TLC, and then we ended up getting usually the Raw the night after for the Slammies as a nice little consolation prize. But, Philadelphia did get the Royal Rumble a couple of years ago. It had Money in the Bank back in 2013. I think I did a chart ages ago, maybe about a year or so ago, as far as the cities that have the most love when it comes to WWE pay-per-views in history. And obviously the New York metro area is tops. And then it kind of goes down a little bit from there, and I believe Philly's somewhere in that 4th or 5th area, which makes sense because that's about where we are in terms of market size in the country.
That's about it.
Oh, all right. Appreciate the look at the local scene as always there. Good to Ed from Northeast Philly for chiming in. Certainly appreciate it, and you can do so as well via the telephones 215-949-3232 or toll free at 888-922-2149. You can also chime in on the Facebook fan page, Pro Wrestling Weekly on 1490 a.m. WBCB, which John from Northeast Philly has done. And as he has, he's put a couple of things on there, including a story I didn't know if I really wanted to necessarily get into, but I guess since it has made the ways of the internet, we'll at least talk about that, so we'll get into that coming up in a little bit. But he posted, meanwhile, at a Sixers game, and it notes that Joel Embiid emulating Triple H's iconic entrance. I have to admit, I haven't seen much of this here, so I'm actually looking at this myself. It says Joel Embiid is out to prove that he is the king of kings of the NBA. The rising star of the Philadelphia 76ers did his best Triple H impression during player introductions on Friday nights. This would have been last night. As Philadelphia geared up to play the Charlotte Hornets, Embiid emulated the game's classic entrance, full-on water display included. Triple H was quick to catch wind of the tribute, offering some quick pointers to Embiid, but also congratulating him on a first try well done. Triple H... Triple H saying, still have to perfect the water-to-spit ratio. Not bad for a first attempt. Hashtag mop the floor. Hashtag NBA vote. So nice little love there from Triple H to Joel Embiid. Nice to see that the Sixers are on the map in some sort of sense here. Even Ted Efaw is cracking up at that in the back there. It's nice to get those Philly sports stories tied in there. It's that was one that, as I said, I missed because I was at Factory Friday last night, so I missed out on the festivities that was the Sixers game. Although I have to admit, I think I've been to maybe 2 in my lifetime, something like that. Yeah, two different Sixers games. One was way back in middle school. I think it was the year before Allen Iverson was drafted, to give you an idea how long ago that was. And the other was a few years ago. I had won tickets from some sort of a thing, and it turned out to be the day before a major blizzard hit. So the paid attendance was well under 10,000. I think the in-arena attendance, you probably could have counted in the hundreds. It was that sparse of a crowd, but those of us who braved the snow for the games, because I figured, I've got free tickets and may as well take advantage of them. And I don't know if the Sixers won in either case, but those are 2 different time frames. They were, I guess, BA and PA, before Allen and post Allen, I suppose, in terms of at least my viewing standpoint and things of that nature. Also, another thing to let you know about, since I didn't get the chance to mention it earlier with the technical issues, George's Cards and Collectibles. They have their first signing for 2017. It's going to be tomorrow. That's right, the 15th, from noon until 2 p.m. It'll be former WWE and TNA star Victoria, also known as Tara. She'll be at George's in the Chamonix Mall. Now, as you know, George's has 3 locations for all of your cards and collectibles needs, including their original store at 7755 New Falls Road in Levittown. Also in the Willow Grove Park Mall on the second level near Macy's and Tivana. And in the Neshaminy Mall in the movie theater wing. Now, for more information, you can go to georgescollectibles.com, as well as following George's Cards and Collectibles on Facebook. You know, they've been good friends to us here at WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly for many years, so it's always good to show them a little bit of support and love, as they've brought quite a few folks here, including, about 3.5 years ago now, I believe it was Shawn Michaels, who was at the Oxford Valley Mall back when they had the location there, and that was what prompted me to meet. Even though he's not here today, conspicuous by his absence, Lucas, dealing with a personal family issue at the moment. So he apologizes for not being here and wishes that he could come. That he could have joined us last week, but with my health being what it was and the flu going around as it had, it was probably better that he stayed as far away from me as possible. So I guess that means I have the flu all the time. I'm not sure. Anyway, speaking of Shawn Michaels, he was approached by, as a lot of different celebrities are, by TMZ this past Thursday morning. And after Michaels appearing on Raw this past Monday, there were some questions and rumblings about whether we might see Shawn in the Rumble, especially considering that it's in his hometown of San Antonio, Texas. So TMZ Sports throwing that and a few other more off-the-wall questions at him.
Listen, man, you're the heartbreak kid. What's the worst heartbreak you've ever went through as far as with a girl? Like, what's the worst way a girl broke up with you?
Trying to remember. You know what? I'll tell you. When I was in high school, and believe it or not, broke up with me because I wasn't affectionate. You know, like I was too gentlemanly. You know, I was very timid and shy and didn't get anywhere fast enough.
Really?
And I got dumped. Yep. Believe it or not. Yes. Stunning.
Well, let's say, what have you hunted lately? Have you hunted anything pretty?
I haven't. You know what? I haven't done much, honestly. I'm gonna go for Turkey in Florida this year.
I saw you get into the Raw. You were on Raw this past week. But when we see you wrestle again, I know like Undertaker's gonna be in Rumble. Will we see you wrestle again?
No.
Definitely not.
Not if I can help it.
Well, let me ask you this. You've wrestled for years and stuff like that. Do you think Tyson, because he was in the WWE for a little bit, do you think he would have been a good wrestler?
I have one more.
I would imagine.
One more? I have one more. Sorry.
That's one though, man?
That's it.
Okay. And one last thing. Of all the wrestlers you wrestled, who was the one guy who was the sweatiest wrestler you've ever wrestled?
Sweatiest? Man, I sweat like, for a little guy, I sweat like a 400-pound man.
I hear you, bro.
How about that? Declaring himself the sweatiest wrestler. What an interesting declaration. But you never know what those TMZ sports guys, what kind of questions they're going to throw out the various celebrities. They went all across the board there, from whether Shawn will wrestle again to hunting to a personal heartbreak. It is kind of entertaining and ironic that he was too gentlemanly and didn't exactly move things fast enough, and then fast forward probably about a decade or a dozen years later, and he'd probably be about as forward as he could be by having two words for you, if you know what I mean. Well, of course you do, because this is a pro wrestling show, and you're familiar with Shawn Michaels and Degeneration X and the whole "if you're not down with that, I've got two words for you." So, yeah, very entertaining. A nice little tidbit there from Shawn Michaels. We also saw The Undertaker, and he made his declaration that he is going to be in the Royal Rumble coming up 2 weeks from tomorrow. One of the 13 names so far announced for the Royal Rumble match. I'll go over those in just a moment, as well as the rest of the lineup so far. Looking to be pretty jam-packed. 4 title matches and the Royal Rumble match itself. The WWE Cruiserweight Championship on the line, as Rich Swann will be defending against Neville. Also, you have Charlotte defending the Raw Women's Championship against Bayley. And then the 2 major heavyweight championships, the WWE Championship, AJ Styles defending against John Cena. That should be a huge matchup, to say the least. And a rather interesting one for the Universal Championship, Kevin Owens against Roman Reigns, where the other half of Jericho, Chris Jericho, will be suspended in a shark cage above the ring to ensure that he won't interfere on his best friend's behalf and keep it at a fair one-on-one clip. And then, of course, you have the Royal Rumble match, made famous over the last 30 years. That's right, 1988 being the first Royal Rumble, where out of the 30 men, 13 have been announced so far, including Goldberg, Brock Lesnar. Almost seems like a kind of a reunion or Legends tour in a sense with those first 2 names. Big E, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods, all 3 members of the New Day in there. Chris Jericho, hopefully that'll be before his shark, the match with the shark cage. That way, he at least has a time to rest up there, based on how much he may be exerting himself, as opposed to not really having a chance to warm up in the shark cage and then having to go and, depending on his draw, possibly go through 29 other individuals. Braun Strowman, the big man's going to be in there. Baron Corbin as well, speaking of big men. Seth Rollins announcing this week that he is joining the fray, as well as The Undertaker, as aforementioned, and a few names from SmackDown joining the Rumble as well, including Dean Ambrose, The Miz, and Dolph Ziggler. So SmackDown getting a little bit more representation in the 30-man over-the-top rope Royal Rumble. Now, speaking of Raw and SmackDown, as you've noted that they've kind of been going head-to-head. There was one point a couple weeks ago with John Cena's return where, I believe for the first time ever, SmackDown's ratings were higher than Monday Night Raw's. Now, granted, that hasn't that trend hasn't continued, but Raw is still showing signs of, I guess sputtering might be too harsh of a word, but showing signs of being visually challenging when it comes to getting viewers in. I guess that's a good way of putting it. Monday Night Raw holding up reasonably well against the College Football Championship from this past Monday night, drawing a 2.03 rating. It's amazing how how a decent night is in the 2s when they were consistently in the 4s so long ago. But there also weren't as many digital options, and there wasn't DVR. So I think the number may scare people, but I think it's. I mean, the game has kind of changed a little bit. I mean, we're talking digital viewing as opposed to DVDs, as opposed to VHS tapes, as opposed to beta. I mean, how far back do we want to go here? I mean, things are a little bit different. So the number might scare people and say, "Oh, wrestling's in the tank." It's not. No, it's viewership is different across the board. I mean, how many people have talked about over the course of the NFL season how ratings have been down? It's because people, even live sports, haven't necessarily become must-watch. Life has become so fast-paced that must-watch is now, I'll watch it when I can get to it, or if I can get to it. And that's, I think, a lot of what it is here. But for those who did view it live, there was a big hit on Raw in the third hour. Not a shock there. Dropping from just over 3 million viewers in hours 1 and 2 to 2.69 million viewers in the third hour. That's a drop of roughly 325,000 viewers from that second hour to the third hour, which is well above the 10-week average drop-off of 283,000 and well above last week's 103,000 drop-off. So I know it's something that people have been clamoring about for years, but it doesn't look like we're going to see any kind of change to. It doesn't look like WWE's getting rid of that third hour of Raw, even though they're losing, on average, 283,000 eyes set on that show. I guess what they're making up for it in terms of ad revenue is worth adding that third hour to the mix. The 2.03 rating below last week's 2.09 rating, but above the December average of an even 2.0, and just a hair above the prior 10-week rolling average of 2.02. So they're right about where they needed to be, and that'll be the last hurdle as far as football competition, as at least in terms of Monday night, because there's no more college season, and the playoffs are relegated to the weekends, at least for this weekend. Then next week is the conference championship, and then, of course, the Super Bowl coming up in February. To give you an idea, though, a year ago, Raw drew a 2.36 rating, so it's dropped. Percentages, math things. Goodness, probably about 14% or so since just trying to do the math off the top of my head here from last year to this year. Kind of a scary thought there, I suppose, when you look at it that way. Yeah, I was going to say, trying to do the math here and let the computer work with me, but it's not exactly doing so in a good fashion. Here we go. There we go, genius. It would help if the number lock was on. Nothing could go wrong if it's live, right, Vince McMahon? Gotta love that. Apparently, this old man doesn't seem to know how to run a calculator. Go figure. I feel like Old Man Periwinkle from Match Game or something like that. Oh, okay, there we go. 13.98%. So I should stick with doing math in my head because I'm apparently better at it than using a calculator. And they say technology's rotting our brains. I say just I guess as long as I know how to use technology, maybe it might. But as long as I continue to not know how to use it, then I guess I'm good. Oh, goodness. I feel thrown off since I took the early time out here, so it's a bit of a longer segment than usual here. But since we talked about it with Ed from Northeast Philly, I can get into it here. Mania going Mardi Gras again. That's right, WWE issuing a press release that this past Tuesday to announce that the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans will host WrestleMania 34. Yeah, you remember WrestleMania. Oh, yeah, you know WrestleMania. It's here we go. That's right, WrestleMania 34 on Sunday, April 8th, 2018. Vince McMahon saying in a statement, New Orleans is a perfect setting for WWE's biggest celebration of the year. On behalf of everyone at WWE, we thank Governor John Bel Edwards and New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu for welcoming WrestleMania back to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Gotta certainly love it. There we go. That's more the Mania theme I'm used to, although now there's going to be some sort of particular annual theme, I suppose. Who knows? We'll see. But yes, in addition to WrestleMania, other activities will include WrestleMania Access, the 4-day interactive fan festival at the Ernest N. Memorial Convention Center. Also, the 2018 WWE Hall of Fame induction ceremony at the Smoothie King Center. That's the indoor arena not too far from the Superdome. Well, the indoor, I guess, smaller venue, since the dome would, in a sense, be considered indoor because it's, a dome. Also, NXT TakeOver at the Smoothie King Center, Monday Night Raw at the Smoothie King Center, SmackDown Live at the Smoothie King Center. That center's getting a lot of work. Plus, there will be a Star anti-bullying rallies, hospital visits, and other community outreach initiatives designed to give back to the host community. Now, something I found interesting, April 8th, this will mark the latest date in the calendar year that a WrestleMania has occurred. Yeah, the previously latest date occurred on two different occasions of April 7th. One of those you may remember more recently. I know I do because I was there. WrestleMania 29 from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, back on April 7th of 2013. And then you got to go way back to 1986 for WrestleMania 2, What the World Was Watching, emanating from three different venues, the Nassau Coliseum in Uniondale, New York, as well as the Rosemont Horizon in suburban Chicago, and the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena in L.A., which that just came up. Oh, that's right. I was talking WrestleMania 7 with Ted earlier, and that's how that came up there. But we'll get more into that a little bit next week with a little fun thing that I'm putting together regarding the history of our, well, by this time next week, president and WWE. And yes, we'll do a little look back at Donald Trump's history with WWE. That should be fun, as there have certainly been a lot of memorable moments in the long history, almost 30-year history between Donald Trump and World Wrestling Entertainment. Now, not that I'm one to speculate or talk rumors. You know how I am about rumors, especially when it comes to potential spoilers. But there's been a lot of talk about WWE taking a rotational approach to WrestleMania between roughly 5 cities. Now, considering that WrestleMania was in New Orleans back in 2014 for WrestleMania 30 and is now returning to New Orleans again in 2018, might this be a shift to that philosophy? And if so, I mean, what are we looking at as far as the realistic possibilities in terms of the rotation? I mean, I've got kind of an idea here. You've got to figure that there's going to be some, dare I say, California love. Yeah, that's right. Possibly a return to Santa Clara and Levi's Stadium, as they were just there for WrestleMania 31 back in 2015. But now with the move of not one, but now 2 NFL teams to Los Angeles. Of course, the Rams this past season, and as announced just a couple of days ago, the about to relocate Chargers, formerly from St. Louis and San Diego, respectively. It's possible that the soon-to-be-built Los Angeles Stadium at Hollywood Park could see WrestleMania make its way there as early as 2019, when construction is expected to be completed. And considering that the stadium is set to hold 70,000, but for expansions for things like the Super Bowl and maybe WrestleMania could be 100,000 capacity. You know, Vince loves that potential 6-figure attendance. So that could end up being one of those rotational venues if they decide to go that way. Or if nothing else, it could be a one and done just because it's a new venue. That's something that's come kind of big in that regard. So I don't know. Are we looking to replace Lincoln Financial Field as of yet to maybe get it here to fill? I hate to say it, but I think that ship has sailed, Philadelphia fans. I think it's going to be one and done as far as WrestleMania is in Philadelphia. And if you didn't make it to WrestleMania 15 back in 1999, then I think you missed your one and only opportunity. So along with that, obviously New Orleans, as that has been announced. I could see Texas being in the mix, perhaps either continuing at AT&T Stadium for that six-figure attendance, maybe going back to Houston. Within the last decade, they were at the Houston Reliant Dome, I believe it was, and or whatever they've renamed it now, if they have done so. And you have to figure that both Orlando and Miami are in the mix because they love that sunny Florida weather as well. So you could see a rotation of WrestleMania in the next few years pretty much being between four different states of either California, Texas, Louisiana, or Florida. Because what other, I mean, I maybe could see them going back to Atlanta, but again, unless they go out of the mix with a dome, but again, that kind of takes away from the rotation plan that they're kind of looking for, or at least that has been rumored to be looked for. So I don't know. It's I guess your guess is as good as mine, and there will be a lot of speculation on it. But we may, I mean, some would argue that we've kind of seen a rotation for the most part just over the course of the last. Maybe if you look at the last decade, we'll go from 2007 to now. I mean, you've seen Detroit, which was at Ford Field, and I think that was kind of one of the more of an anomaly than anything else. But since then, you've got Orlando, Houston, Arizona, Atlanta, Miami. Then you have the one anomaly in North Jersey and East Rutherford, to get that New York market. But New Orleans, Louisiana, Santa Clara, California, Arlington, Texas, Orlando, Florida, and now New Orleans, Louisiana again. So that, I mean, I don't know. If we see in 2019 that it goes back to California, that could be your rotation of Louisiana, California, Texas, some form of Florida, and then maybe back again in kind of a 4-year span, which, I mean, it might be great for those in New Orleans, and well, I guess with Texas they could have different venues. As I said, the Reliant Stadium. That's what I was thinking of for Texas, for Houston, Texas, I should say. But I don't know. I'm concerned that this is a trend where you won't necessarily see a northward bound travel for WrestleMania anytime soon. So maybe we'll just hope for another Rumble again, or maybe a SummerSlam, or a Money in the Bank, or a Survivor Series. Who knows? Anyway, we'll take care of our second time out here, and then we'll come back. I'll talk a little bit about the UK title tournament and something that's kind of been grinding my gears about that. Also coming up, we've still got Today in Wrestling History. We've got birthdays. Gotta love the birthdays. But here at 12:43, you know what time it is. Got to tell you about my friends over at the Broken Goblet Brewery, and Ted's going to love this one. Get ready for a first at the Broken Goblet Brewery, 1500 Grundy's Lane in Bristol, PA. Some might call it extreme seasonal creep, but the Goblet calls it first. Come try the USA's first pumpkin beer of 2017 called Cut the Crap-O-Lantern. It is a 5.8% pumpkin porter, only available at the Broken Goblet starting January 27th. And the image associated with it is hysterical. It's a lineup of different holiday mascots in line right out front of the Broken Goblet. And you see the jack-o'-lantern cutting in front of Cupid, as well as the St. Patrick's Day leprechaun, as well as the Easter bunny. So it's a hysterical image, so kind of giving you the idea of the cut the crap-o'-lantern. But yes, the first pumpkin beer of 2017. It's a first, although some would say extreme seasonal creep. So I wonder if that means they'll be doing Christmas beers in April. I don't know. Well, I mean, for wrestling fans, WrestleMania is like Christmas to a lot of people. So if they do that, hey, then they're right on line with the seasonal creep there. Draft and limited bottles are going to be available starting on the 27th for that. Meanwhile, currently on tap, for those who don't want to wait the 13 days, you've got the return of Bubba's Tea Bag, as well as Carl the Great Barrel-Aged Russian Imperial Stout. Oh man, that is a very select thing. You definitely want to get some of that. It's a Russian Imperial Stout that was aged in Macallan Scotch barrels. So it's got a nice wood smoky flavor. I'm salivating just thinking about it. I got 15 minutes to go here. Man. Plus, it's not too late to sign up and be part of the band as an irregular member. All kinds of perks, including a members-only glass, members-only beer in the back, discounts on growler fills, and much, much more. It's always a good time at the Broken Goblet Brewery, 1500 Grundy's Lane in Bristol, PA. Broken Goblet Brewing, the semi-official brewery of Pro Wrestling Weekly. Please enjoy responsibly. So coming back, we'll talk the UK tournament. We'll see what other insanity we'll get to here. We'll get back to the Facebook fan page as a few people have chimed in here. And Jerome, to answer your question, yes, we do know where Lucas is. He had to deal with a. I'll put it this way: he had to be a pallbearer, not to be confused with William Moody, who passed away a few years ago. So he is at a funeral at the moment, so he was unable to join us today. And for Bob and his response, unless something has changed in the last few moments, no, he does not have a girlfriend. So. Although he was loyally here when he did have one, so let's not poke fun at that in any particular case. We'll get to some more responses there from John from Northeast Philly on the Facebook fan page. You can join the discussion too at Pro Wrestling Weekly on 1490 AM WBCB. That's the Facebook group, and whatever you post on there, I'll more than likely read out here, and it's kind of a read and react. It's like an improv type session here, but that's what makes it more fun. It keeps me on my toes here on Pro Wrestling Weekly on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.
Hi, this is Pat Wandling, host of Speak Your Piece, letting you know that the Endoscopy Center at St. Mary is partnering with us to bring you the Thursday edition of our broadcast live from various locations throughout our community. Now, the program runs from noon until 1 p.m. with a live audience. Now, be sure to tune in. It's a great opportunity to be proactive with your health.
All commentators heard on WBCB express their own views. Their opinions are not necessarily those of others on WBCB, including the staff and management.
Thousands of families affected by disasters, like the recent hurricane, urgently need support. You can help the American Red Cross provide warm meals, shelter, and hope to families when they need it most. Please donate today to Red Cross Disaster Relief to help people affected by disasters, big and small. Go to redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS today. Your support is critical. We can't do it without you.
Brain, spine, and back disorders are life-changing, often leaving you alone to seek answers only to be rushed through an assembly line office. The compassionate doctors at Princeton Brain and Spine Care have a mission. It's their duty and goal to treat your condition with the care that you deserve and with the care that you need to get better. At Princeton Brain and Spine Care, your quality of life is their best reward. Visit them online at PrincetonBrainandSpine.com or call 215-741-3141.
Pro Wrestling Weekly presents Today in Wrestling History, January 14. On this date in 2001, WCW held its Sin pay-per-view. In the main event, Scott Steiner defeated Jeff Jarrett, Road Warrior Animal, and Sid Vicious in a Four Corners match to retain the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. On this date in 2002, WWF Monday Night Raw aired live from Dallas, Texas. In the main event, Chris Jericho, Lance Storm, and Christian defeated Farouk, Bradshaw, and Rikishi in a six-man tag team match. On this date in 2007, TNA held its Final Resolution pay-per-view. In the main event, Christian Cage defeated Abyss and Sting in a three-way elimination match to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. On this date in 2008, WWE Monday Night Raw aired live from Mobile, Alabama. In the main event, WWE Intercontinental Champion Jeff Hardy defeated Randy Orton by disqualification. This has been Today in Wrestling History, January 14.
Welcome back to Pro Wrestling Weekly here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com. Wow, how was that for a memory? The WCW Sin pay-per-view where infamously Sid Vicious broke his leg during the match. And Gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. Seeing the leg just bent in a direction that it shouldn't go. It's almost like the I guess to use the NFL comparison, the Joe Theismann hit. I was gonna say, Ted, you might be more of an expert on that than I would. Was it Joe Theismann that got, or am I thinking of? Joe Theismann. Oh, it was okay. Was that the one where was that the one where he broke his leg in the midst of getting sacked? Or
yes.
Okay, I was confused whether it was him or whether it was. I'm confusing him and I think Jim McMahon. And maybe that's where I'm getting the two of them confused.
This was
that was
horrible snap there.
Yeah, and that's basically what this was on this pay-per-view. A four-way match where in the midst of this confusion where there was a mystery opponent and whatnot, Sid went to the second rope to perform some sort of an aerial maneuver, and fortunately to the technical director, just I guess as an accidental goof, they cut over to the mystery person making their way from the locker room, and this is in the middle of a match. But next thing you know, you just see Sid laying on the ground, and his leg is bent in a direction that it shouldn't be. And you just, I remember seeing it and just grimacing at, I think I was 19 at the time. I was just like, the side. It looked so out of place, it almost looked like a fake prosthetic leg. It was just that.
Wow. Oh.
And this was just in the middle of the match, and he never ended up wrestling full time after that. Granted, WCW would get sold to WWE 2 months later.
Yeah.
So a lot of the talent ended up well, the way it worked was either they could, get a lesser guarantee and come back to work early, or they could sit out their exorbitant Ted Turner contracts and collect until those contracts ran out. And that's what more than the majority of the bigger names did, was they just kind of let those seven-figure paychecks come in, and once they were done, then they started to come back in 2002, maybe 2003, and that's where you saw a lot of Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and some of the bigger names that didn't necessarily come in right away. I think Diamond Dallas Page was one of the few who had a more lucrative contract but jumped right over because he wanted to wrestle. That was more of what it was about. He wasn't just there to collect he wanted the money too, but he didn't want to just sit back and collect a payday and do nothing.
Right. Well, you and I have talked about this off the air. I was very familiar with not very, but much more familiar with Ted Turner's league from when I lived in Virginia. So I used to watch it on TBS.
Well, that was the changeover from the NWA and Jim Crockett promotions into what became WCW in the early 90s.
Right.
And eventually would grow to huge lengths in the mid to late 90s with a lot of talent rating. That was, the mid 90s were a little cringeworthy as, and I'm pretty much taking a direct quote from Jay Hunter at OSW Review, cheap pop, or cheap plug. But I guess at that point they felt that the best direction to go for mid-90s WCW was to go late 80s WWF, and they just started pulling all these guys over. I mean, it started with Hogan, and then it was Mean Gene Okerlund. I mean, granted, he was a backstage interviewer, but, Macho Man Randy Savage and all of their buddies started coming along. So next thing you know, the guy who used to be Brutus the Barber Beefcake came along, and the Nasty Boys, and Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, and just all these different names started coming in.
This is all flashbacks for me, as you mentioned.
As I'm just rolling down the names here, but that was I guess their key to success was to get these star names, but then they had all this underbelly of talent that would eventually grow to become big names of their own. But not with WCW, because those big names up top didn't want to give up their spots.
Right, that's right.
And that's where a lot of the pendulum swung the other way in 2000, where you saw, 99, 2000, 2001, where you saw the names of the past decade and a half start to come up and rise, like a Chris Jericho, who's still around, Rey Mysterio. Oh, goodness. I know there's quite a few here. I mean, Dean Malenko would jump over, as well as, and I'm getting all the radicals there, Chris Benoit, who I know is kind of the Voldemort of WWE with everything that happened with him back in 2007.
Right.
Oh, gosh, this June it's going to be 10 years since Benoit's death. Wow.
Oh, my God.
Well, I know what retrospective I'm doing in June.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because that whole weekend was just really weird.
Yeah.
Because it was on the heels, I believe, of a pay-per-view, and there was all this kind of overshadowing with that. And then there was the tribute to him, and then they found out that it wasn't a triple murder, it was a double murder-suicide, and it was just a mess, to say the least.
That's horrible, but then you think, you just said 10 years.
Yeah,
as you get older, those years seem to, it doesn't seem like it was that far away or that long ago.
No, it doesn't feel that far removed, and then you go, wow, yeah, I think of that with this show here. I mean, next month, it's going to be 18 years that the show's been on the air.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
10 years with Eric the Loose Cannon Gargiulo and almost 8 years for myself here. It'll be 8 years for me coming up in March in a couple of months.
Are you going to have an anniversary show?
More than likely. I'm constantly trying to figure out what I'm doing with the show, with here at the station, with life. It's it's
well,
it's a constant.
It's not a big number. 20 will be the big.
Yeah,
number.
20 will be the big one. I mean, they did a nice thing for me where they had Merrill and a couple other people record some things. I'll probably have to try to reach out to some of the people who I've talked with over the years, and now that I've been able to meet some of these people in a training capacity, I think that might be a little bit easier. Although you'd think it'd be easier for me to get them here on the show here, but I guess usually because they're working on taking bookings on a Saturday, it's a little rough. But we'll figure something out as we go along.
I was just thinking off the top of my head, something you ought to calculate one day: how many actual shows you've done.
I've been trying to work on that. I know how many I've done. I don't know how many Eric has done based on his.
You could do a retrospective on how many shows you've done. I mean, you're closing in on 10 years, so you've had to. My guess is you've probably closing in at least on you have to be near over 1,000, don't you think?
But combined, more than likely. I mean. Yeah, I mean, because you figure 18 years, let's say 50.
Maybe it's not that
well, I mean, because you also have to account for sports preemptions and whatnot.
Right.
So maybe that number isn't quite up there, but I mean, there's quite a few that's gone along here. I mean, I'm trying to do the quick math here. It's been a while since I've uploaded them too, so I'm trying to. So I was at 330.
I think you could be around 800.
9. Okay. At this point, if I had to, I mean, I'm trying to quickly count up to see where I'm at. I'm probably at about 370 or so for me.
Okay.
And then however many Eric did on top of that. So you combine the two, you're probably looking 850 or so, I'd say.
That's what I'm saying,
so yeah, by the time 20 years hits, it'll probably be closer to 1,000 episodes.
Wow.
But yeah, that was those. I tried asking Eric for those numbers, but he never really collaborated. He just kind of came in and did the show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I really wanted to dig through the archives and kind of look at what days the show aired, but I mean, that would be a lot of paperwork digging and timesheets and everything else.
No, I was just off the top of my head because I was thinking of that, but you don't do this 5 days a week. It's 1 day a week. So when I said, well, 2,000's way over, but
yeah, it's one of those with those weekly episodic type things, kind of like what Raw does.
Right.
I mean, they celebrated their 1,000th episode back in 2013. Was it 2013? And at that point, that was close to 20 years that they had been on the air, but they had very few preemptions.
Mm-hmm.
I think just way back in the day, they'd be preempted for a week in early February for the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show on USA Network, and 2 weeks in late August for their coverage of the U.S. Open tournament.
Right. Okay.
The things you remember, right?
That's right.
And I completely blew through all the stuff I was going to here, and I got about a minute and change left here. So, yes, the brackets for the UK title tournament, 16 folks involved. My issue with it, why not just reinstate the European Championship? That way you're not just limited to England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. Considering the old European Championship that was around from 97 through 2002, it only had 2 true Europeans in it, and they were both British. The British Bulldog Davy Boy Smith and William Regal. Keeps you from being restricted. Then you could have potential competitors from Spain, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland. You could have Cesaro kind of possibly get in there, and pretty much the rest of Europe. So I don't know. So I've got like 40 seconds. Time for a very, very quick birthdays. On this date in 1954, James Edward Duggan Jr. was born, the WWE Hall of Famer, first ever winner of the Royal Rumble, and former U.S. and television champion in WCW, better known as Hacksaw Jim Duggan, turns 63 today. Tough guy. Ho! Also, on this date in 1964, Ernest Clifford Miller was born. The former WCW and WWE superstar, best known as Ernest the Cat Miller, turns 53 today. On this date in 1970, Eugene Allen Snitsky was born. The former WWE and TNA star, best known as Snitsky, turns 47 today, and it wasn't his fault. And on this date in 1986, Matthew Frederick Riddle was born. Had to throw this one in there. The former mixed martial arts competitor, former winner of the Ultimate Fighter, and former the MFPW heavyweight champion, as well as current Evolve star, turns 31 today, bro. And the Brucey bonus, gotta love this one. On 1948 in this date, Carl Weathers was born. The former pro football player, linebacker for the Raiders, as well as actor best known for playing Apollo Creed in the first 4 Rocky films. I know him better as golf expert and club pro Chubbs Peterson from the Adam Sandler movie Happy Gilmore. But he turns 68 today. Happy birthday to all. Ted Efaw is up next. He's got Country Roads coming your way. And until next week, play us out, Nutsy.
1 o'clock and all's well.
Serving you better than ever before. This is 1490 WB.